like for every period, there's a period of high zeal and enthusiasm in ibadah, and then there's also a period of like lows, right? So then the hadith goes, whoever's like period of lows is upon my sunnah, then he is saved. Remember? We said the hadith.
Mashallah, yes, yes, yes,
So
yes.
this is one aspect of that baseline. At least make sure your daily zikir got that covered, right? Okay, I mean, you have your
Mashallah.
up and downs, fair enough, right? At least your morning zikr, you know, like the daily things, this book got you covered, man.
ولو أن أهل القرى آمنوا واتقوا لفتحنا عليهم بركات من السماء والأرض.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yaumiddin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh.
Hayyakumullah, ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Brothers and sisters, welcome to the Barakah Effect podcast. And today we'll be having another book review. And the book that we're going to review today is Fortress of the Muslim by Sheikh Said Al-Qahtani. Brothers, let's see your copy of Hisnul Muslim, Fortress of the Muslim, if you have it. So Aziz has the Malay translation.
Malay, right? Perisai Muslim.
Perisai Muslim. And okay, so Brother Reeza has another publication.
My publication is by Da'wah Corner Bookstore. And unfortunately, the cover is already faded, but you cannot see it. It used to be like a gold cover. So, alhamdulillah, it's pocket size and mashallah. It's good.
Signs of overuse, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So, I mean, just to set some context for it, it's a very common book. I think if the brothers and sisters here have been to some events or some gatherings, it's actually one of the favorite books to give out, yeah? Like, you'll find this very often, right?
Yes,
it's like dog gifts, and people enjoy giving this book. But sometimes what crosses the minds of people when they receive this book is like, what is the significance of the content of this book? Like, how do I use it? How do I apply it? And, you know, why? Like, what's the big deal, you know? So I guess that's, inshallah, the reason why the person who chose this book is going to review it today. And that person is Brother Reeza. All right, Brother Reeza.
Inshallah.
So take it away. Why did you choose this book to be reviewed?
Okay, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. So this book, actually, it's a very concise book. In total, it's about 150 pages in my publication. But it's not really like a conventional book whereby you have the typical, let's say, distinct writing style or expansion of ideas. So it's basically more of like a collection. And it's a really important book for the layman in the sense that we, throughout our episodes here in the Barakah Effect, we have mentioned it in many episodes, actually, because it's like a go-to book for us, like a reference book, whereby it's very simple, it's very concise. And basically, we also had some feedback from our listeners as well, that, you know, they have purchased this book because they have listened about it in the lectures, and, you know, people have mentioned it, but when it comes to their hands, it's a bit difficult to digest, because it's not, as I said, it was not like a typical book whereby you have a context of you know, expansion of ideas and all these things. It's more like a collection, and therefore for some people it's about a matter of, you know, where do I start with this book? How do I go about it? And in a lot of instances, when people take this book without knowing what to do with it, it just becomes something that is thrown on the side or becomes part of the furniture on the bookshelf, because it's not easily, let's say, understood how to use it. So that's one of the intentions of today's book review, is to view how can we best approach and utilize this book, inshallah. And as I mentioned before, it's an important book for us laymen. And why I chose this book also, a big reason particularly, is because it had a very huge impact in my life. You know, firstly, I heard this book, as we mentioned, through one of the lectures. I can't recall which lecture it exactly is, but here I want to point a point of benefit is that do not underestimate the value of a good word, because the lecturer in that particular regard, he just mentioned this book out of context, or perhaps he's not aware of the impact. But what it did to me, that I took that information and I looked into it, and what I practiced from it, and we hope that it's a means of sadaqah jariyah for the one who was conveying the knowledge. Because to me, this book is a very important book in my life, one of the most important book, because it's something that I have learned a lot from it. Basically, a lot of my daily practices is learned from this particular book. When I just to relate to you a story of mine, when first exposed to knowledge of our religion, you hear about so many benefits and gems throughout all the lectures. It's like a sea of knowledge, and it's hard to keep track. When you first know about the Sunnah, you feel that very high level of what do you call this, determination to want to practice it. But at the same time, the information is all scattered, and it's all, I heard this here, I heard this there. It's difficult for the layman to digest it and really practice it in their life, because a lot of it is a lot of theories and a lot of explanation, which is, alhamdulillah, is very good. This is how it's supposed to be. But for the layman like me, and perhaps people out there as well, it's not so easy to get the information. And how do you take the information and practice it in your life? How do you adopt the Sunnah in your lives? So that was one of the things that I was struggling with. And alhamdulillah, I got wind of this particular book from one of the lectures, and I purchased it from, as I mentioned before, the Da'wah Corner bookstore. And mashallah, since then, I have this particular copy for a number of years now. It's been sort of my companion. I have it always everywhere in my luggage or bag, so that it's easy reference. And mashallah, I cannot recommend enough this particular book, because for the layman, it makes all of the Sunnah practices like easy to practice, because it categorizes the different recitations that Rasulullah SAW used to mention in his daily life in an easy way, and it's easily referenced, and it's easily referred to, so that when you are encountering a specific situation, for example, let's say you need to go to the toilet, right? What did Rasulullah SAW mention or said when he went to the toilet? It's all clearly mentioned in this book. And it's organized in a way that it's simple, without too much information, but enough that it's easy for the layman to take it on board and adopt it in their daily lives. So this is without an understatement, it's had a huge impact in my life, and I benefited daily and greatly from this book. And most of my daily practices I had learned from this book.
And so this is, brother. Actually, I have a very similar story. When you said, "Oh, it kind of triggers like similar memories." Taking down memory line on my own life. Actually, I like the point you said, that it makes the Sunnah very easy, because like when you first read this book, like there's a lot of dua, right? Like I think more than 200, right?
Hundreds.
But in reality, majority of them are only like one line. They're very short. Some of them are like maybe one word. Like getting out of the toilet is ghufranaka. Right? Oh,
Yes.
that's it. Like
It is Bismillah, right?
it is
Yes.
Bismillah, right? And then after
Yeah.
drink, Alhamdulillah. Like, oh, really? That's one sunnah. And you do that if you drink 10 times, you practice 10 sunnah a day. Like, so it makes things like, because I think just relating back with my like our upbringing, the word sunnah always sounds something like difficult, like a bit, like challenging to do, right? If you want to implement sunnah, you got to do this. But you just, that's mashallah. It's so doable, right?
Mashallah.
And a similar story with what Reeza said. I have an uncle, actually, a bit distant uncle, sort of my second cousin in my mother's family. So he's the one who said, "Faisal, go get this book, Hisnul Muslim. You must practice this book, because majority of people who learn Islam and practice Sunnah, they still fail to uphold this book, the practices in this book. So like, wow, this
Ooh.
very short statement.
Okay.
Because that time I was very new. I was very new to learning religion. And he started with that line. I still sticks to me. He said, "Oh, ramai orang tak buat benda ni." Like a lot of people fail to uphold this. So I'm like, wow. Until today, I still hold on to it. And I was like, wow.
MashaAllah.
You know, try
MashaAllah.
our best to do this. MashaAllah.
Big impacts from few words, huh?
Yeah.
MashaAllah.
MashaAllah.
MashaAllah. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's not only for myself, but I guess also for you brothers out there and maybe the listeners out there, that this book is a very easy to approach and very accessible for the layman, and that's why this is a very important book for the layman. And it contains a lot of different types of adhkar, basically words of remembrance of Allah that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to practice. And actually, this is the best way, to get closer to Allah. In this book, there is a dhikr regarding the morning, what you said in the morning, the evening, what to say after salah, what you say after when you wake up, to sleep, to eat, put on clothes, going to the washroom, istikharah, basically everything, almost every situation in your life, even in the invocations during the times of when you are having difficulty or distress, it's all collected in this very simple concise collection, and it's easy reference, and it just shows as well that the comprehensiveness of our deen, and that Rasulullah sallam, the companions used to say that Rasulullah sallam taught us everything, that even how we should relieve ourselves in the toilet, this is all covered in our religion. So basically it shows in that our religion is very comprehensive, and when you adopt all these invocations or recitations throughout your daily life, your daily life suddenly turns into an embodiment of what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to practice, and basically you are embodying the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in your daily life. So this is something amazing that is very understated, that sometimes, as Brother Faisal mentioned, people look at Sunnah as very let's say surface things, what's the Sunnah, but they feel correct. Obviously the ones like having the beard and what the visual identification of Sunnah, but there's a lot of things that perhaps we as Muslims, the laymen, also need to look into our daily practices. Everything that we do, there is a thing that that can connect us to our deen and what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to practice, and therefore this book is the best first step to do that. And just a word about the author. It's authored by Sheikh Said bin Ali bin Wahf Al-Qahtani rahimahullah. He is one of the contemporary scholars who lived in Saudi Arabia during our time, and he just passed away a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken, in 2018. And I recall this particular time when he passed away. It was quite a big news that I have seen people talking about it, and people, I recall during the time of his death, people always people talk about his book, how beneficial was his book, this particular book. Although he has authored many books, but people point out to this particular book, while small in size, but benefiting the ummah immensely. So I just want to point out here as well, as a side note, the inspirational story of how this book, how a particular project becomes a sadaqah jariyah for you when you pass away. When I think about it, this book has some parallels. I'm not saying that it's exactly. It has some parallels to books such as the 40 Hadith by Imam Al-Nawawi, Al-Bukhari, the Sahih collection, in the sense that it started with a simple idea of benefiting the ummah, the people, making the deen of Islam easy for the people. And for example, Al-Bukhari, he collected his Sahih based on a simple recommendation from his teacher, right? But Allah has placed a lot of barakah in our scholars' works, in that Allah makes it a means of ease for people to adopt it and to practice it, and it's something that lasts a long time. Just put it into perspective. Imagine for every person who memorize, make the adhkar from the daily practice from this book, and I can attest to that for myself. A lot of the adhkar I learn every day, what I practice every day, is from this particular book. Every time you recite it in the morning, in the evening, after your salah, the author, we hope that the author, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, mentioned that he will introduce a good practice in Islam, which is followed after him by the people. He would be assured of the reward, like the one who followed it, without it diminishing in any respect. So just take a step to reflect on that. Subhanallah, the people who recite the daily adhkar to get closer to Allah every day while learning from this book, the author in his grave now, all his deeds are cut off now, except for the sadaqah jariyah, the three things that comes to is continuous after the passing of a Muslim. One of it is sadaqah jariyah. So imagine how much extra sadaqah jariyah and deeds that he is collecting based on his, let's say, investment in this dunya. Mashallah, this is something amazing that really is inspiring for us to know that the author, if you strive with the ikhlas to Allah may make something that is small at the time that you do it be beneficial for you even after you die. And so this is also a very important lesson for us, that this story should inspire us to reflect and to think, what will you have on the day of judgment to present to Allah as a sign of gratitude, that from the abilities and the risk that He has given to us, what have you prepared to present in front of Allah, that you say that, Allah, this is my project, I did it for your sake, and I hope for rewards from it. So no matter who we are, we always have something to contribute, and let this serve as an inspiration for us to think about what we can contribute or what we want to present in front of Allah during the day of judgment.
Inshallah. Yeah,
So,
he'll come on the day
inshallah.
of judgment, like getting all these pile of rewards and like wondering where does it come from, right? It's
Mashallah.
from all these downloads and all these books. And by the way, this is in app form also. You can find it in Google, like so many different versions of it in like Apple Play Store and Google Play, right? So, mashallah. I remember when he passed away 2018, right?
Yes, yes.
I remember like, wow, I was like quite, that took me aback. So I was like, I was very inspired by this, like what Reeza is saying. I wish that I can have the similar thing. Like when we pass away, we leave something behind that people continue to refer to and continue to get benefit in. So that's something yang, for me, it's always been my life goal, right? So I'm hoping that Barakah Effect can be one of them. And I remember when he passed away, I just for curiosity, I just tried to look up on Google, what App Store, Play Store, right? Google Play Store. I just typed Hisnul Muslim, and that app on the Android version alone had the magnitude, if I recall correctly, at least 5 million downloads at the time. Imagine, that's just downloads from Android version only. We don't know about iOS version. We don't know about other languages. We don't know the hard copies. Allahu A'lam, Allah knows best. And imagine, and that's just the looking on the superficial side of it, like number of downloads, number of sales, all these things. Okay, but at the end of the day, how many dua, how many zikir people actually recite? Even if one morning zikir you recite because of this book, every single time he get the reward. MashaAllah. I think
it's
that's awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I cannot brain the whole thing. It's totally amazing.
That's amazing. Subhanallah. So to me, that's very inspiring, as Reeza said. We all should aspire to develop one thing at least in our life that Muslims will continue to benefit from after we pass away.
MashaAllah.
If I may add to that as well, I think that one of the strength, the specialties of this book, Hisnul Muslim, is that it makes it easy for people to memorize zikir. Yeah. And because it's pocket size, so you can just slot it into your pocket or back pocket or backpack. Yeah. Because the Salaf always reminds everyone said, human beings, you have ups and downs. Yeah, there are days that you don't want to study. There's days you don't want to memorize Quran. But on those down days, make sure you read your zikir. To the point when they raise children, they get their children to start memorizing the Quran. But at the same time, they always tell the kids to memorize zikir. Then we say that there are days that you're up and your days that you're down. But when you're down, make sure you never leave the zikir. And Hisnul Muslim has this specialty that it helps because you have it easily for you to commit with it, to bring it wherever you go. Inshallah, that helps you to memorize all those zikir.
MashaAllah.
So never leave your zikir. No matter how, even though you're very busy on the day, then do a minimum, but never leave it all altogether. Yeah.
MashaAllah.
And yeah.
And just to make a callback to our episode in season 1 called The Slump, what to do when your performance is low. Remember, we repeated this hadith? Like for every period, there's a period of high zeal and enthusiasm in ibadah. And then there's also a period of like lows, right? So then the hadith goes, whoever's like period of lows is upon my sunnah, then he is saved. Remember? We said that hadith.
MashaAllah. Yes.
So this is one aspect of that baseline. At least make sure your daily zikir got that covered, right? Okay, I mean, you have your
MashaAllah.
up and downs, fair enough, but at least your morning zikr, like the daily things, this book got you covered, man.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. That's amazing point, brothers. MashaAllah.
I just want to
And
add
al-
something.
yeah.
Sorry, just to maybe later we can edit this and put it earlier because I tak sempat reply tadi.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I wanted to add on the point that how Reeza is saying is our deen is comprehensive and what's the function in our day-to-day lives. So we always emphasize in our past episodes how important is taqwa, right? To build that consciousness of Allah, right? So if you're doing this in every important milestone of your day, and even it's not even important milestone, like mundane milestone, right? Leaving the house, going to the toilet, leaving the toilet, entering the vehicle, right? All the, like drinking water, eating, every single sort of mundane day-to-day stuff. If you're always filling your tongues with the remembrance of Allah, that actually spread it out, that builds your taqwa, right? It's a consistency. It's a mechanism that helps you build in that continuous consciousness. Because, I mean, for example, it's very interesting. You reflect one ayah of the Quran, right? وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِ. Uphold the salah so that you have the remembrance of Allah, right? That's the meaning of the ayah, right? So the purpose of salah is for you to dhikr, actually. But salah, you only do it 5, maybe a few more times, right? With the per day, right? With the salah, the sunnah prayers, right?
Yeah.
So how do you fill in those gaps? This is how. That's the. So it helps build in that the baseline. It builds. Oh, consciousness. Okay, I gotta do this. I gotta remember Allah. And you see, there's a psychology behind it as well. If you're filling your tongues with remembrance of Allah, that kind of reminds you, like, hey, don't do naughty lah.
Yes.
You're always like remembrance of Allah.
You're always conscious that Allah is always there, and you are remembering Allah all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And also you're occupied. Your time is occupied. So most of maksiat happens because you have free time.
Free time. That's the one.
Correct.
MashaAllah.
Correct. And also, this particular thing, in regards to remembrance of Allah or dhikr, it's something very easy to do because you can be also doing other things while also having remembrance of Allah or reciting dhikr. And this is something that, a lot of people fail to realize, that when we have left this world, we will regret perhaps every moment that we didn't remember Allah as we are supposed to. We would think back and we only live in this world maybe 70, 80, 90 years, and compare that to what we will face in the akhirah is eternity, right? So that puts things into perspective, in that this 70, 80 years, this is precious time that even the believers in the akhirah, they will regret that they didn't spend this time to remember Allah more. So this is something that we have to always be conscious of, and this is an easy thing to do, dhikrullah, and the benefits are, as we have learned in the religion, is immense. It eases your tasks. It has so many pluses to it that it only is there. You can't lose with the dhikr, the dhikrullah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And actually, I want to reflect. So one major benefit as well in for us in the modern day today, right? There are very few reminders of Allah and the akhirah, right? If people look around you, right? Let's be very realistic here. And so you need these kind of mechanisms to remind you. And also what you see today in today's modern times in social media, right? People are saying that Islam is difficult. Do you see that pattern? Hijab is
Yes.
difficult, Salah is difficult. Keep on complaining it's difficult. Amazingly, a companion also complained to Rasulullah SAW on the same thing. Are you guys aware of this hadith? He said, Ya Rasulullah,
Yeah.
Islam is so much burden, so heavy on me. All right. So what did Rasulullah SAW advise him? Ensure that your tongue is always wet with the remembrance of Allah. Very concise.
Mashallah.
And this book helps you do that. So the idea is when you're always like making dhikr, you realize that, hey, it's not that difficult to implement Allah's commands. So
Yes.
if you do it all the time, okay, I can do one more thing. So there's a psychology behind it, right? It's a habit building. If you're habit building, right?
Yes.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
And then
Amazing.
eventually the hard things become easier. Right.
Yeah.
And then as Amir said, if you're occupying your time with, alhamdulillah, with ibadah, eventually you kind of have less time to do the naughty stuff. So the habit building of removing the naughty stuff and building the good stuff. Amazing. Very concise.
Mashallah. So one note about the habit building. When I first got this book, I saw a lot of du'as in there. And so I thought, as perhaps a lot of people would think, wow, this is a lot, But when you basically go through it one at a time, perhaps I will share with you how to approach the book later on. Just to approach it one at a time and building the habit, suddenly you realize, oh, I've known a lot of du'as from this book, so don't be disheartened when you see a lot of dhikr, or a lot of du'a or dhikr in the start. But as Brother Faisal mentioned, when you build that habit, suddenly you realize, oh, I've done quite a lot, mashallah. So this is one important or good benefit from this book. And just to highlight some features of this book, one of the core strengths of this book is that this is all of these invocations of or adhkar is derived from the authentic Quran and the Sunnah. So by far for most laymen, all of the filtering has been done for us. Because it's not that easy for us to filter out specific hadith, whether this is authentic or this is not authentic. It requires a certain level of knowledge in the takhrij of the hadith to evaluate the chains of narrations, the wordings of the hadith. And therefore, for the layman, sometimes this is something that is not easily apparent. And therefore, one of the big strengths of this book is that all if not most of the dhikr in here, the adhkar in here, are authenticated and filtered, that it's confirmed is from the authentic sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So basically, when we refer to this book, we have little we don't have to worry too much about whether this is authentic or not. The author has done his homework, inshallah, to the best of his ability, to compile the authentic adhkar from the authentic sunnah. So to me, this is one of the big strengths of this book, because then the layman can just approach it and without really thinking too much about whether this is authentic or not, and so makes it very simple, mashallah. And also, secondly, what I found in discovering this particular book is that there are so many hidden gems from the sunnah that is not really apparent. Even if we attend some classes, it's not fully covered in classes. For example, there are some sections here like during traveling, when you are, for example, ascending and descending, the sunnah is to say Allahu Akbar when we ascend and Subhanallah when we descend, right? So it's practical in the sense that, for example, when you go on a plane to travel, instantly when you remember, okay, when you ascend, Rasulullah SAW mentioned that we say Allahu Akbar when we ascend, and we can apply this in many aspects of our lives, when we travel, when we go about our daily life. So a lot of hidden gems in here that we learn in addition to what we learn in the classes. So mashallah, this is something. And and it's very simple in presentation. It's very well organized. It has a glossary of contents in my particular publication for easy reference. So the glossary is basically categorizing the different invocations to the different situations in your life. For example, invocation for traveling, invocation for entering a town or a city, a market. So different situations in your life. Instantly, you can refer to the glossary and refer the specific dua, the specific authentic dua that Rasulullah SAW mentioned. And what I like about especially my particular publication is that it has the English translation, the Arabic text as well, so you can learn from it. The transliteration for people who are not really, beginning to learn the Arabic text, and even the reference to the hadith as well. So it's everything that the layman needs to know in regards to the practice of this. And if the layman, if we wanted to research more, we can also go to the specific hadith based on the reference. So it's a door to a lot of beneficial knowledge, inshallah. And of course, it's very compact. It's pocket size, as I mentioned before. It makes it very handy for memorizing, as Brother Amir mentioned before. So, when you are particularly, let's say, you are bringing it wherever you are as a companion in your backpack, you encounter a specific situation, you can quickly take it out, and for quick reference, this is dua for the specific situation. And it's a good way also to teach people through it as well, because it's very simple, it's very easily digestible. And mashallah, these are some of the strengths of this book that I can point it out.
Also, to highlight as well, Brother Reeza, every publication I've seen so far, from Dawah Corner, Darussalam, they will always have the footnotes about what's the benefit of that dhikr, if there is one.
Yes.
So whoever recites this once in the morning, evening, he gets so and so. I find that very, very motivating to use. It's not just about zikir. That's actually some super awesome reward just by this phrase that you require 5 seconds, right?
Yes.
Like I'm just reading right now. Raditu billahi rabba wa bil islam midina wa bi Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam nabiyya. You recite this 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the evening, which takes you 10 seconds.
Few seconds,
my son memorized this when he was 2 years old. Anyone who recites this 3 times in the morning, in the evening, and meets Allah, Allah will be pleased with them on the day of judgment. What? So simple. When you read it, wow, really? Okay lah. So when you read it, you're like, it doesn't make sense not to read it,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it gives some dimension as well. When you recite it, you remember the benefits from it, and it adds a different dimension. It's not just parroting words, but you know that there is a particular reward that is linked to it, and basically it motivates you, as Brother Faisal mentioned. It motivates you to really, when you mention it, when you recite it in the morning, in the evening, you internalize this particular dua. It's amazing for your it's the really heart softening as well as a benefit. Mashallah.
Just a bit of a comment on the authenticity, Reeza. Just to clarify, just in case there's some confusion. The publication that I have here, Dawah Corner, it's really good because it tells you that at least one scholar has authenticated the hadith. Now, there may be some dhikr, which I have actually encountered, that there are some scholars that say that it's not authentic. So even for example, the morning and evening adhkar, did you guys notice? There are couple.
There's one.
Like for example, Hasbi Allahu la ilaha illallah.
Correct. This one.
So then later on, I found out that quite a lot of scholars say that it's not authentic. But still, the good news is at least one scholar says so. This kind of like a difference of opinion. And so if you find it's not authentic, then you can leave it behind. But for the majority, at least because every single narration here has at least that confirmation that it's authenticated by at least one hadith scholar. So at least you can, as a layman, just trust. You can put your trust in this. You can sort of the ittiba is to the scholar, the authority of the authentication. You rest it upon the scholar who has authenticated it. So your responsibility is done. As far as you are concerned, between you and Allah, you have followed the Sunnah according to what you believe is authentic.
Mashallah.
And for those who are the nation that are weak, so some scholars say that weak is a light weak. It's not a deep weak. It's not a severe weak.
It's not like fabricated or anything like this, right?
It's not fabricated. Even for a level of weak, it's not it's light. meaning somebody else has
Yes,
increased
but-
it to something a higher level, like Hassan,
Correct.
for instance. Yeah.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, mashallah. Good points, brothers. And it really shows as well, what stands out for me in this particular book is that the Sunnah of Rasulullah SAW is very precise and very easy. For example, to point out that when Rasulullah SAW mentioned what he mentioned when he wanted to eat, he just said, Bismillah. This is what is contained in this book. And I'm not saying that the other dua is not recommended or is not good. Alhamdulillah, as long as the contents are good, is good, inshallah. But it shows the preciseness of the Sunnah, and that the guidance of Rasulullah SAW is the best guidance. So when we see the preciseness of the Sunnah and the wordings that Rasulullah SAW mentioned, we would, we are contented that we would follow exactly what was reported from Rasulullah SAW that he mentioned, rather than some other thing that might be, let's say, increased, maybe good in our eyes, but in the Sunnah, in the sense that we want to follow as much as precisely possible from Rasulullah SAW. And in that regard, a lot of the adhkar in here is derived from the hadith that is reported directly from Rasulullah SAW, and therefore it leaves us to know that the Sunnah, as it has been carried from generation to generation, is very precise in the wordings and is very easy. So this is one benefit that stood out for me. And with this book, one of the most amazing things is that it could transform the life to adopt a life of a person, to adopt the remembrance of Allah in every situation. So just perhaps to share a benefit for myself, in the sense that I have gained a lot of benefit in this book, in the sense a lot of the daily dhikr that I practice is learned from this particular book, and even I'm still also learning from it, alhamdulillah. And basically, by no means it has changed my life for the better, inshallah, from this simple yet concise book. So this is one of some of the benefits that stood out for me in this book. And we also received some basically feedback from the listeners out there that they have heard from what we mentioned in our podcast, and some of them have purchased the book, mashallah. But it's not really apparent how to approach the book, because it's concise. It has different chapters, different collections, and therefore there is not much it's not like a typical introduction, body, and conclusion kind of structure. It's basically a compilation. So how do we best approach this book? Firstly, okay, this book is, as with all the Islamic knowledge that we wish to approach, firstly we purify our intentions, that we memorize, we recite it for the sake of Allah alone, and we wish to get the rewards from Allah alone, and understand that the guidance of Rasulullah SAW is the best guidance compared to any other guidance. And this is basically the keys to success. And basically what is collected in this book is the best means of getting closer to Allah, because this is what Rasulullah SAW taught us, right? And this is the best way to get closer to Allah in your daily life. So how we approach this book is basically, there's a table of contents, at least in my particular book. It's like a glossary. It's divided into chapters. Firstly, the author mentions the virtues of remembering Allah. So this is a good introduction. But after that, it's just really categorized in different sections of different times of day in the Muslim's daily life, or any person's daily life, like supplications when you wake up, invocation when getting dressed, even invocation on putting new clothes, just to name a few. So basically, a lot of the situations in our daily life is covered in this particular glossary. So the best way to approach this book is just look at the glossary, and for any situation, look at the page number and go and refer to it, and seek these specific situations. And as we mentioned before earlier, try and adopt it not all at once, but as a small step every day. Even if you see there's a lot of collection here, but try and memorize, let's say, one invocation maybe every day or every few days, for example. Take it one at a time. And basically, when you use this book, use it as a tool to memorize, because in the end, what you want to be able to do is basically be independent of the book. Once you have memorized a lot of the dua and you go about your daily life, you know what to you know what to recite in different situations without actually referring to the book. So use it as a means for memorization, and it's simple and it's clear. And in some of the publication, it has the transliteration as well, if you are not sure what the specific pronunciations are. So this is a very good aspect of this book. Use it as a tool as to memorize. And while you do that, bring it wherever you go, when you go about to your daily life. And inshallah, after a while, you will realize that, oh, mashallah, during your morning, you know what to recite. After the salah, you know what to recite. When you enter the toilet, you know what to recite. So it becomes really a part of your life when you start to memorize it step by step, and build that habit of memorizing the dua as well. And inshallah, we hope that Allah makes it easy and makes it something that Allah makes it a means of closeness or getting closer to Allah in your daily life. So this is essentially how you would approach this book. Basically, you can bring it wherever you go and use it as a tool for memorization. That's really important. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's how, at least myself, that's how I approach this book. And also, when we mentioned before the sadaqah jariyah, right, that the author has, we hope that he is collecting when he has written this book. You also can make it a means of your sadaqah jariyah. You know how? You can give it as a gift to someone, and you show it to someone how to use this book, how to practice this book in their daily lives as an introduction. And inshallah, if that person adopts whatever you have taught them, inshallah, you will also have a share in the reward as well. Not only the author, but you who introduced this book to that person, and you who gifted this book to that person, you also have that share in the reward. So this is something also empowering, that there's also something that you can also try get some investment for yourself as well from this particular book. So it's a very beneficial book in a nutshell. And I close with this. I would recommend.
Sorry,
it's a really
before
good,
you close,
yeah,
just to compliment a bit on your
Okay.
how to approach the book. So you covered it very well. But I would like to make some additional also, in addition to that, I'd like to make some additional recommendations on 2 companion pieces to help on how we can approach the book and at least obtain the spirit of what the book tries to achieve. So 2 recommendations. First one is, I want to recommend this other book called 1000 Sunan Every Day and Every Night. Have you seen this book before? It's by Sheikh Khalid Al-Husaynan. This one is by...
mashallah.
Yeah,
I haven't seen this one particularly, but mashallah.
Yeah, it's very small. Another
Good.
pocket book.
Mhm.
Yeah, very simple. So it's by Darussalam Publications. It's fantastic. You can use it as a companion piece with Hisnul Muslim. And why I like this book, actually, to me personally, initially, this book was more beneficial than Hisnul Muslim. Why? Because it actually maps out your daily life, what happens in a day, and what milestones will you at each milestone, what should you recite at that milestone?
Oh, okay.
Like chronological order. So okay, now you wake up, what do you recite? First thing you wake up, where will you go? Guys, where do you go when you first wake up?
Toilet.
Bathroom.
Supplicate doa. Toilet.
Toilet, right?
Toilet.
I was half expecting somebody say kitchen, but okay, you said
Oh.
toilet. No, just joking. Okay. So yeah, that's the first thing. So it's very intuitive. So it says waking up, then entering, leaving the toilet, and then wudu, and then using the siwak. Like, these are things that you do, right? Like it's very, very step by step. And then wearing shoes, dressing and undressing, leaving the house, going to the masjid. So, like there's all of these steps. And this book actually gives an extra inspiration and motivation, because not only is the dhikr, because like Hisnul Muslim is mainly focusing on the dhikr, right? But this one, even the acts itself. So for example, you go to the masjid, like every single step, you get one reward and one sin removed, right?
Okay. Yes. Yes.
So
Mashallah.
so then it's nice. He does it like a narrative. And he says like, oh yeah, so by now you've practiced like basically 100 sunnah. Okay, let's go some more. So by the
Mashallah.
time you have at least, it says 1,000, but in reality it's like many more than that actually. So that's the empowering thing. You're like, oh wow, like by lunchtime I've basically practiced like 500 sunnah, something like that. Like right? That's
Mashallah.
really empowering.
Mashallah.
So
Is
yeah,
this the same Sheikh Khalid that passed away 10 years back? The one.
I'm not sure. Maybe I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't know. Sheikh Khalid Al-Qahtani, I'm not sure about that.
I love it also is because it's take it step by step, in the sense that it
Yes.
guides you through your day, and because in Hisnul Muslim, it's alhamdulillah, it's recitations, it's particularly dealing with recitations, like what to say in adhkar. But that book goes a bit one step further, in the sense that some of the things that, like for example, walking to the masjid, the virtues of walking to the masjid, and that's mentioned in that book. So it's
Yeah.
also complementary, let's say, mashallah.
Yeah, it's complementary, because all the recitations here are also in Hisnul Muslim. So
Mashallah.
nice. It's like a companion piece. And I think just relating back to me as a layman, when I first studied Sunnah and like don't know what even dhikr is, like looking at the table of contents for Hisnul Muslim is very intimidating. Like, oh, where do I start, right?
Yeah.
So this one is like, okay, day-to-day life. So yeah, that's one
Okay,
companion
okay.
piece that I can recommend.
Mashallah.
So that's recommendation number one. Another companion piece that we always recommend is the QalbyApp, right? So you have this for the OS, the Android OS, and also in Apple. So this app is very useful as well. And it helps in many ways. Number one, because we always on our phones anyway. Just saying, right? So right, if there's a dua part here, so it actually, like every part of the day, it actually like scrolls down like every milestone of your life. And what the productivity side of it is, like every dua that you're trying to memorize, you can actually click like memorize button, and then it will group it in a certain way. So so for example, like they also have a playlist. So for example, for me, I put the dua of istikharah on the playlist, because it's a very important dua, and like I want it to be like quick access, so it helps that. So a book, maybe like you got a bookmark and something like that, right? So maybe like in this, because it's always there, very fast to activate. So you can just put inside your playlist and you're inside your hifz. So if you want to memorize certain ones, you just memorize that one, and you remove from playlist and so on. And just like Brother Reeza saying, like don't be intimidated. Just focus on one dhikr at a time. Like, oh, but there are 9 more to go. Don't focus on the 9. Just one more. Just do one first. And then by the end of 2 weeks, mashallah, inshallah, you memorize like a lot. By the end of a few months, probably memorize the whole morning and evening adhkar, dhikr.
Yeah, mashallah. Great points, Aki. So yeah, I think in summary, this particular book, although small in size, but it packs a big punch, in the sense that I think it's very important for the layman, when for most of us that are just starting to learn the religion as well. It's a good starting point, and therefore I would really recommend it, that every household has at least one, for ourselves and our families to really have a good reference on what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam he practiced throughout his daily life. And basically, because of the size, you can carry it anywhere. So use it as a tool, as a means of memorizing, of getting closer to Allah through His remembrance. And inshallah, Allah will make it easy for you to memorize a lot of the adhkar that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to practice. And in essence, what do we really want out of this life when we leave this life? We have the good hope, or the high hope, that we want to meet Rasulullah sallam at the fountain, and how he differentiates, how we would be differentiated in that day, is that basically who who really was truthful in embodying his Sunnah during their lives, and who is really negligent in their lives. This will be the differentiation of the people who will be with Rasulullah SAW and his companions on the day of judgment, and who will be basically not be with them. So this is something that we really need to always internalize, and think of how can I make my life better as well in trying to practice the deen as best as we can, and trying to get close to Allah in the correct way. So this is a good starting point for a lot of us, and I can attest, especially for myself, and I'm still learning from this book as well to this very day. It's a very good book that a lot of us should own and really learn from it, inshallah. So inshallah, this is in a nutshell what the book review is all about, on Fortress of the Muslim by Sheikh Said Al-Qahtani. And may Allah make it easy for us to memorize and practice Rasulullah Sallam's what he practiced in his daily life. Jazakumullah khairan.
Ameen. Jazakumullah khairan, Brother Reeza. So alhamdulillah, that concludes our review of Hisnul Muslim, Fortress of a Muslim. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us amongst those who are consistent in his remembrance.
Ameen.
Ameen. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.